All right, now we gotta wait for the cough to subside. I woke up this morning with a bit of a cough, and of course, like everyone who gets a cough, my hope is that I end up with a gravelly, sexy voice, but I think really what's gonna happen is I'm gonna get about 30 minutes in, and then my voice is gonna get all squeaky and maybe start coughing a lot, which I don't want that for you to listen to, so I'm gonna do my best and power through. I was thinking of skipping today, but well, you get all the personal updates. My the computer basically just died on the weekend. I had to get rid of the old operating system and then get in a new operating system. And it was very stressful. And I almost bought a new computer, which might have solved my problems, but also not, because most of my problems are emotional. Anyways, what you're here for, what I'm here for, what everyone's here for, is the Japanese news. Japanese man scheduled a tweet. I'm dead and go would be the translation of it. This is very meme-oriented speech. The "gleh" would be his death rattle. And then he said, I'm dead. And then the "ngo," which is a very Japanese meme. There was a baseball player, Rodrigo Domingo, so "ngo," and he embarrassed himself. So this is almost like you add this to the end of words when you're embarrassed. So he's basically saying, I died. I'm a little embarrassed about dying or how I died. And the fact that I'm dead is also a little embarrassing in itself. So that is the tweet. In 2023, this guy was 20 years old and he was diagnosed with a very rare form of cancer. His profile said, I like cute girls. I also have cancer. So he was maintaining a sense of humor about it, which I think we can all appreciate how hard that must be to do. So there is a very bittersweet tone to all the jokes he's making about having cancer and dying. And he still likes cute girls because he's a 20-year-old guy. He scheduled to tweet every day. So basically, if he died, he wouldn't be able to reschedule the tweet, and then the tweet would go out. So when it went out, all these people noticed, but it started garnering a massive amount of attention online. And it turns out it set off a series of people donating, usually with something like, here's my donation and go, or my condolences and go, and things like that, in reference to this tweet. And they're saying 30 to 40,000 donations came in as a result of this tweet. So it is tragic that this young man died at a very early age, unfairly, of a very rare cancer. He maintained a sense of humor about it, but it was inspirational enough to people on the internet. The other meme, like, this is the positive side of meme culture. Other people got the meme, they joined in on the meme, they got his feelings right away, and they said, you know, this guy did this, I could donate some money. And it set off this massive donations, and people want to say thank you. And honestly, I wish I could do something as positive with my life. Bear attacks have been a massive issue in Japan, like way more so than I would have thought. Like when they started talking about bears coming down from the mountains into the towns in northern Japan, that's a lot. Bears are scary. I grew up in Canada. We learned how to defend ourselves from bears in the very realistic way of don't get involved with bears. When I used to walk my dog in the forest, I used to put a bell on the dog and have a bell on me so the bear would hear the bell and avoid you. They're telling kids when they walk home from school, get a plastic water bottle and like scrunch it as you walk. And this is, again, you grow up in different places. I have a friend who grew up in Florida and he learned about, being safe from gators. You run serpentine because gators are very fast in a straight line, but they're very bad at their turns. So basically they must have like stock engine with, they haven't lowered for the turning ratio. Right. I should have actually thought about that joke and gotten some words right before I started it. But there is the rhyme. If it's black, fight back. If it's brown, stand your ground. And if it's white, say goodnight. So if it's black, fight back. So black bears do what's called a false charge. So when they come at you, if you kind of like go like you're about to fight them, they'll often just turn around and run away saying like, oh man, I thought this was going to be easy and it's not easy. If they charge you and you run away, they're like, oh, well, this worked out. So they're actually just testing to see if you'll fight back. Brown bears are stand your ground. So if it's brown, stand your ground. And so what you want to do is that's when you stand, you make yourself big, you make lots of noise, and you try to scare away the bear. Basically, the bear isn't scared of you, but it's like, nah, that thing's way too much trouble to kill and eat. So I'm just going to go find something easier to kill and eat, because bears are fundamentally lazy. I understand bears. Like, I understand the need and the desire of bears to want to do the minimum amount of work, because that's how I've lived my entire life. If it's white, say goodnight, because a polar bear will just kill you for fun. They might not, but it's completely up to the polar bear. There's nothing you can do to stop it, is basically the idea. So remember that rhyme. But the problem is these bears are coming down from the mountains. They're hungry. In a previous episode of Ninja News Japan, I actually talked about something that I didn't know. Farmland used to be a barrier. So it used to be mountains, sort of forest, farmland, and then cities. But because young people are abandoning farming as a trade, there's a lot of empty farms. There is now no more cushion, so the bears come down. There's no farms. There's like empty fallow fields, so they just walk into the city. So there's no sort of barrier or transition zone to keep the bears out of the cities. Now, there are not enough beech nuts. Basically, apparently in Japan, all the bears are eating nuts, and if there's not enough nuts from the trees and around the area where they live, they don't have enough to get fat for the winter, so they start coming into the city. So this is the problem, that the crop of nuts that they eat wasn't enough this year. So they're working their way down in the city. Sounds funny until you realize 13 people have died this year in bear encounters. Like, there's 200-300 people have been injured, but there have been 13 deaths. So this is a very serious thing. Like, people are dying on a regular basis, whereas before, like 2 years ago, zero. There would have been 0 bear deaths in that year. The Self-Defense Force has offered logistical help, because legally the Self-Defense Force is not allowed to shoot bears. So this was an interesting thing. It came up maybe last year, the year before. Ishiba, the previous prime minister, when he was a minister, brought up the issue of whether you could employ the Self-Defense Force in Japan against Godzilla. And it's because you're allowed to employ the Self-Defense Force for an invading army, but Godzilla isn't an invading army. So there's a couple of movies where Godzilla is controlled by like aliens. That's an invading army. You could use the SDF in that case. But if it's just a natural event, you're not supposed to be able to use the SDF. So you have to work your way around that. So in this case, they're offering logistical help, and they don't have weaponry that would actually kill a bear. Like, all the weapons they have designed for the Self-Defense Force in Japan are for suppressing fire. So I'm sure it could still kill you, but that's not actually the intent of the weapons that they tend to carry. So you need the hunters to kill the bears, and they're trying to put in this special emergency rule that police can carry a gun that would allow them to also kill bears, because they can't use the SDF to do it. But the SDF can come in and help lay traps. They can do logistics. They can do it, like lend their intelligence to the locals while they take care of it, which is a very interesting problem, because they're doing this properly. It's not like Trump in America, who's just like, I'm going to roll the National Guard into Portland because I want to. In Japan, it actually makes more sense. We have literally people dying. We have literally animals that need to be trapped and relocated or shot and killed in the worst case scenarios. They still won't do it because legally they're not supposed to be able to do that. The SDF can be used for defense operations. So again, invasion from another country, public security, which this is kind of public security, disaster relief, and civil support. So in this case, they're actually offering civil support. Gifu, a different prefecture, a little farther south, in order to deter bears from entering Gifu, have now employed drones that will fly along the border, the northern border of Gifu, and they are making dog barking noises to scare away the bears. So that is an interesting technological use of to try to deter them from coming here, which I find very interesting. They're trying to stop the bears by making it seem like there's dogs around. But the problem is, if you live in one of those areas and a drone's flying around making barking noises all night, that's problematic in itself. So I don't know if it's honestly the ideal solution, but it is better. I don't actually want the bears to get shot. I would love if they were trapped and relocated. I think that is kind of the more humane way to do it, because they don't want to come into town and hurt people. They just like are surprised. The person's surprised. The bear does what a bear does. It attacks the thing when it's surprised. One of the issues that's come up on the internet, because the internet is a cesspool, is people have been using AI to make fake bear videos. So they'll have a fake bear walk through a town, and then they'll post it online going like, there's a bear in this city right now. And that's problematic because people in that city will now panic. There's people making baby bear videos where the bear comes up and is super friendly, basically just behaving like a dog, and they hug it and they can pet it and stuff. But that's teaching people that it's safe to approach bears, which they don't want to do. So the government's actually going to crack down on this version of AI. In the last episode of Ninja News Japan, I talked about Japan's laws on deep fakes and deep fake porn and stuff like that. They haven't actually caught up to the reality of people making it. So that's problematic, but this is a different problem. This is a public security, public health, public safety issue. They're going to need rules about that. It turns out there is already a rule, though, that if you do something that encourages risky behavior or panic, that's already illegal in Japan, and you may face prosecution. What I read this morning, just before I started Ninja News Japan, was that delivery drivers in northern areas of Japan where there are bears are delaying deliveries because they don't want to take the chance of running into a bear by accident. There's a new drink in Japan called water. Tokusui, which is special water, functional water. The way it was translated was functional water, but when I looked it up, it actually just said special water, which is a very Japanese way of naming something. It's just special stuff. And what's special about this water? Well, it has HMPAs, HMPA. And the idea is for people who sit at their desks all day, you get this sort of gut. I actually have a little bit of one, even though I do exercise pretty regularly. And it says that if a regular intake of this kind of water with HMPAs will, I guess the Oompa Loompas go into your stomach, they redistribute the fat. So it doesn't say, this was a very interesting sort of thing that I noticed. It didn't say it gets rid of the fat or helps you process the fat faster or something like that. It helps redistribute the fat. So maybe you got a little gut, but you're actually thin everywhere else, which is something that happens to people. If it redistributes that fat equally all over your body, you're actually going to look way better overall. So I'm actually running an experiment. So this month, the month of November, I am drinking one Tokusui bottle, which is 600 milliliters, 150 yen, every single day. They have done testing, and it says that if you drink this regularly, now they don't say what regularly is, they don't say how much it is. So I'm doing one bottle a day every day, but it is supposed to redistribute the fat around your body. It comes from a bran from rice included in this water. I think it's fermented. And it's one of those things like in Japan, everything comes from a fermented bean. All the like health benefits, fermented beans. All this like magic cures, fermented beans. Like I'm going bald. I could probably rub fermented beans on my head and Japanese people would say that's going to make your hair grow back. I don't believe it. I don't think this is really going to do anything. I made a mistake of I'm dieting at the same time as I'm drinking this water. So I'm not 100% sure. Like I could lose the fat in my front because of the water, or I could lose the fat in the front because I'm basically being more careful about my diet. Again, I don't know if it's going to work. If you see me at the end of this month and I look much more svelte or my clothes are fitting a little better, maybe it's the Humpas. Maybe the Oompa Loompas have done their job. Nintendo, the owner of Pokemon, has been suing Palworld for about 6 months now. I think it might even be longer than that, because Palworld basically ripped off all the mechanics of a Pokemon game. So you want to go, you collect a monster, use that monster to fight and do stuff and build it up. And they decided to make it a little funnier. They have like depressed ones and they have ones with weird special abilities and the evolutions are very odd. But what Nintendo is suing over is the actual mechanics of how they capture the Pokemon, the monsters in Palworld, and that has been dealt a significant blow because the Japan Patent Office just rejected the monster capture mechanic as not being original. Now, there's lots of games that use catch this thing, use a capture system, but they were trying to say this is our system, we have the patent, we're the ones who invented it, anyone else is ripping us off. Now, here's the thing. If you go back to the beginning of Pokemon, there were other games doing the exact same thing, and they actually copied them. So nothing in Pokemon to me is actually original. And that's not a terrible thing, because obviously Pokemon did it well. But when you start suing someone else for ripping off the thing that you ripped off, I actually am like, hey, maybe you've overstepped a little bit. Maybe you don't really know what you're doing. Some of the references to other games that are doing something similar, like the monster capture, they said Monster Hunter, Ark, Kantai Collection, Pokemon Go. Pokemon Go is actually made by a different company than Nintendo. So technically Pokemon Go would be guilty of ripping off the systems that are used in Pokemon, which is a very interesting problem to have, because if you successfully sue Palworld, you could then actually go after Pokemon Go and successfully win. But they're saying because these systems are used in other games, in other systems, that it's not really original. It's not your mechanic. And that actually means they might not win their lawsuit. Super Sentai series has been going for 50 years. So I'm 53 right now as of recording of this podcast, which means I was 3 years old when the first Power Rangers, is how you would probably know it, show was started in Japan. And every year they swap out with new characters, new people, a new team, a new theme. Like my kid went through the same process where he like fell in love with the bug one. I actually really wish it wasn't the bug one. They had bugs and trains and trucks and all these other things that kids, primarily little boys is the target audience, but things that they like, and that gets integrated into the suit and their powers and whatnot. But the originals were just like the real basic 5 colors, the 5-color team, and they're all different people and they all have different problems. Jade has just put in, damn, you're as old as I was when I had my first crush, the Pink Ranger. You see, here's the thing. Being me who I am, I was into the Yellow Ranger. And the Yellow Ranger, when they turned into the Japanese part, was a suit, was actually a svelte young man, which gave me very confused feelings when I was a teen and watching Power Rangers. But I watched Power Rangers. I was really too old for it. I just thought it was really interesting that how they'd cut a Japanese TV show into the American actors. But Trini, had a thing for Trini. I had a girlfriend at the time and she was a little disturbed by that. But it's coming to an end next year, which is actually really sad. Any show that lasts 50 years is kind of an institution. Basically, everyone in Japan has grown up with some version of Power Rangers in their life, the Super Sentai. The sales of all the extra stuff is waning, which is showing a lack of interest in the series. And that's probably where they make all their money. Like the show itself has always been really cheap. And they actually kind of never brought it up a level in quality because that's how they made their money. They made this cheap show and then they sold all this stuff, and all the stuff sold, and that made them all the money they made to make more shows. That's how it lasted 50 years. It was a solid plan. People are buying less and less. The last series is called Number One Sentai Gyozuger. Gozyuger. I don't know how to say that. It's Gozyuger. Gozyuger. They always choose really weird names. Sometimes they come from like German or something else. So I'm probably saying this, not butchering it just in English, but butchering it in multiple versions of the languages. It's going to finish next year. It's going to be the last one. But I guess if you're going to end your show, doing it on the 50-year mark is pretty solid. Heroines is a group of idol groups. So that's already like an inception of idol groups. So you have Heroines is made up of smaller bands that probably come together to be a super band every now and then, much like our previous story, Super Sentai, run by a company called Imaginate. Now, Heroines Kenkyusei, I think that's the name of the band. There's a 17-year-old member who has been let go because of severe contractual violations, but they didn't give any details. So they went on Twitter. They said, here we have this 17-year-old girl. We're cutting her. She's broken her contract. Now, they posted just this on Twitter. She's not going to be part of our band anymore. Now, everyone's trying to figure out why is she getting fired. Well, she's getting fired because she posted a picture of the snacks she had when she was going to a movie. Now, in the clear plastic cup cover of her Coke, you could see a reflection of a male figure. And then fans immediately deduced that that male figure must be her boyfriend. She was going on a date. You're not supposed to go dating when you're in one of these idol bands. You're not supposed to have a relationship or a life outside of the band. You're supposed to stay weirdly available for the fans to live this fantasy like they could have you in their life. And that's all part of the contract, but it isn't because it was made illegal. So they're not allowed to say that anymore, but they are still able to like find another reason to fire you. So they think because she was seen in public with a boy, but again, the fans are so creepy. They're like zooming in on the reflection of her cup to see who she's with. They fired her for that. That's the assumption. Now, we don't know if that's actually true, but I'm betting it's actually true because once it came out that she probably has a boyfriend, 17-year-old girl meets a guy, she's going to go on dates with the guy. I think that's really normal for 17-year-old kids to do. I have no problem with it, but I'm not a freaky idol fan. Freaky idol fans want to keep this idea that their idol is pure and waiting for them in some way, which is how you end up with these really weird parasocial relationships between the idols and the fans, where they're not allowed to have a life outside of the group. A lot of people were like, they should have just lied and said like it was her bodyguard, it was her manager, it was her brother or someone else, because no one else actually knows who this guy is. But I saw the picture of the reflection. It was really hard to see, so you couldn't make out who it was. So they could have said, yeah, she went to a movie with her brother. She went to a movie with her manager, and then just cover it up that way. But they do have these rules, and they're trying to say that the government's saying like you can't tell people they're not allowed to have relationships anymore. You're not allowed to put that in the contract, but they can still not put it in the contract, tell them they can't do it, and then if they do it, fire them, which is what exactly seems to have happened to this poor young woman who just wanted to sing songs and have a life. So we have our new Prime Minister Takaichi, and I am still really torn as to whether I'm on board or not, because she said a lot of stuff that I disagree with. She doesn't want to maintain the work-life balance that's already been established in Japan. She actually wants to make it worse instead of making it better, which I am very pro work-life balance, because I think the people in Japan work unnecessarily long hours. I don't think they're more productive. I don't think this is actually the solution. And it, again, baby problem, all that other stuff goes into it as well. I've said this a million times. I don't really want to say it anymore. When she was on the campaign trail, she said she wanted to revise the public servant remuneration law and cut cabinet members' salaries, including her own. And one of her first things she's going to do is cut her own salary and then cut the salaries of all the cabinet members that work for her. And so she's not so there's lawmakers in Japan, and then there's cabinet members, and they actually have different remuneration packages. Cabinet members often get a lot of bonuses and extras because they travel and they do extra stuff. She's saying cut all that out. You get your pay and nothing else. There's no bonuses. There's no benefits. Lawmakers and cabinet members should make the same amount of money, including herself. I have a lot of respect for that. She's actually made a promise. She's keeping the promise, and the promise is technically hurting her and the people who work for her, but that means we're spending less money, taxpayer money, on the people who are in power. I'm really on board with that, so I'm really torn. This might be a case where this is like a real life situation where she has good points and bad points. I'm just hoping at the end of the day she has more good points, and we get to see more of those later. DL Site is a kind of spicy little website that I've mentioned before. I mentioned before in a previous episode when we were talking about MasterCard and Visa trying to do what would be called financial censorship. So basically, if you run a website that does specific documentaries about the reproductive cycles of humans, you would not be able to use credit cards, MasterCard or Visa, on your sites, because they'll say like, we don't want to promote that. Our advertisers don't want to be connected to that. So you can't use this card system unless you get rid of all the porn. This site, DL Site, wanted to resist these censorship efforts, which I think if you want to look at it, you should be allowed to look at it. It's just that simple. So I don't think there should be a lot of censorship as long as everyone involved is consenting. Like if they're consenting adults, they want to do it, they can do it. I don't agree with manipulation. That's a lot harder. It's a much grayer zone. So they have decided, okay, we're not going to use Visa, MasterCard because they want to censor us. So what we're going to do is create our own, essentially, internet coin that you can use. So you can buy credits and you can use those credits towards actually buying content on that website. They have just come out with a Twitter clone. So it's called Pomu. And Pomu is basically a Twitter feed. And it's a friendly secret hangout for otaku. Now, it's not really secret because they just advertised it, but they're trying to integrate like a social service, so a social website, into their other services. And of course, you can use their coin on both. Now, this has been a very friendly website to people who make a certain kind of art depicting maybe, how can I say in the most gentle terms, the human form. It does have a nice thing though. One feature. So up in the top right corner, it has a little button, and it's a little button where you can toggle R18, which is restricted to 18-year-olds, and not. So you can basically have a safe for work and not safe for work button you can turn on and off. Apparently, when you turn off the safe for work button and turn it on to not safe for work, the feed changes dramatically. But again, if that's what you want to look at and everyone's consenting, I'm on board with it. I think you should be allowed to do that. Apparently, the website has already been flooded with, and I put this in quotation marks, art. And I'm sure there is a lot of art. You can register with a Vivian ID, which is part of their alternate payment solution. They're creating a whole sort of corner of the internet that isn't ruled by censorship, isn't ruled by Visa, MasterCard, or this financial censorship. And while I probably won't spend a lot of time on that website, I am all for it existing. 78-year-old man had an obsession with a woman in her 20s. And I worry that I'm going to be that 78-year-old man. I'm in my 50s. I've held it together so far, but I've done so many stories about men in their mid 50s who just lost their shit and just started doing weird stuff. I'm like, is it an inevitability? Am I going to be that guy? Maybe I make it through my 50s and it happens to me in my 60s, but it looks like this dude in his 70s, late 70s, exactly the same issue. He's known her for about 2 years and he says he developed feelings for her. He was already arrested for breaking into her home and stealing perfume. So that shows the weird level of obsession that this guy already has. He had done this, he'd been arrested for it, he got in trouble for it, but he still had these feelings for her. So how does he express his feelings? But let's say age gap isn't the problem. Let's say that he does have a chance. You have to show your sincere and honest love for someone. What is the one thing you can do that will generally have them change their opinion about you, make you think you're a better person? He set her car on fire. And then when he was arrested, he said, I'm dissatisfied with being arrested, which is a very, very entitled old Japanese man thing to say. I have just set a woman's car on fire because I find her attractive and she's not returning my affection, despite the 50-year age gap, which should be enough to explain why she's not as into you as you think she should be. I mean, let's say I'm in a situation like that. I look at someone way younger than me and I find them attractive. I'd be like, my first thought is, they will not find me attractive. They would have to come with a sign that says, Chunk McBeef Chest, I find you attractive. And that'd be like, but are they telling the truth? So that self-doubt is actually a benefit when you get into these older years where you could be doing really weird, dangerous stuff and just letting the obsessive aspects of your life take over. Because this guy, he's 78. I'm assuming retired, has a lot of free time. He's just sitting around obsessing. And that's where this has gone wrong. Totally. But then when he gets arrested, to complain about the fact he got arrested because he set a woman's car on fire, I'm dissatisfied with being arrested. I think he should not be allowed out anymore. 2 teens were arrested, 17 and 18-year-olds, for a phishing scam. Every episode of the last 5-6 months has had a scam story involved in Indigenous Japan because it is just... it's taking over the country. They found people online and they would say, I'm looking for a companion to go to an idol concert. So they're targeting a very specific group that has money to spend on things like idol concerts. They said, let's talk about how to pay for the tickets. I'll get the tickets. I'll send you 1 yen on our payment system. So you can get it's a real address. It's legit. And then you put the money in to this fake website. And they put the money into the fake website, and that's how it collected their credit card information. And then the teens could take the credit card information and then drain their bank accounts. From one account, they drained 500,000 yen. So the 17-year-old would transfer the money from their account to the other kid's account. And they seem to have got, this is not a confirmed number, but at least 13 million yen in total. So this was a very, very successful scam. The thing is, they've used a lot of AI tools to create the website. So they created a website that looks real, and they've used the tools to make stuff that makes it so that they can collect the information. And it's made it very easy because they can basically just go into AI. I bet you're not allowed to say, I want to make a phishing site, but you could say, I want to make a site that looks like this, that has this aspect, and it just builds it for you. And then you just post it on the internet. And then now that it's been shut down, they can go make another one in a few minutes because they have AI do it for them. The 17-year-old is the better criminal. I'll be very honest. He said, I don't remember the incident. So he's just saying, ignorance, I don't know. You have to do your job as a police officer and prove the crime. I'm not going to help you with that. The 18-year-old, not as good a criminal. He admitted fault right away. 85-year-old man grabs another guy and tries to stab him, who's 65 years old. So he's the younger person in this, because he had been sent to take money from him, except that guy was actually just going to work. So the old dude, 86-year-old, knocks over the 65-year-old and tries to stab him a couple times. So the guy ends up with his hand up, so he gets some minor defensive wounds. An off-duty cop happened to be jogging in the morning, doing his morning workout. He saw this and intervened. Turns out the guy had a kitchen knife in his right hand as he was attacking the 65-year-old, and 2 more knives in his left hand. So he had, again, hit this weird paranoid level. He had hit this weird paranoia, just kind of like our previous old guy story where he's all up in his head and he now thinks that's reality, where the reality is No one's coming to take your money. But he is so locked in that this guy's coming to take my money. He brought 3 knives with him. I don't know how you're holding 2 knives in one hand. Like, is it one blade out of each one? Is it like just 2 so that if you drop the knife that in your dominant hand, you can just swap out really quick? He clearly walked out of his house that morning wanting to stab somebody for something, and then had this weird paranoia. So the police arrested him. He's not made any comment other than he thought that man was sent to take money from him. So like some kind of phishing scam, but that guy was just walking to work that day and he got attacked by a knife. So luckily no one was really hurt. He got, again, a couple cuts on his hands and stuff, but nothing that was like life threatening or particularly dangerous. He's going to heal from that just fine. No problem. The mental trauma, I mean, you get tackled by an 86-year-old and you have to fend him off because he has multiple knives in his 2 hands. That is a scary way to live, and be careful out there of everyone, especially old Japanese men.